Hello.
Hi,
How's it going?
good. How are you?
Doing okay. Doing okay. We just had the fire alarm go off a little bit ago, so yay.
Thanks for willing to do this.
Sure thing.
So I can just jump around then.
Go for it. Yeah.
So I know professionally everything started with Magi.
Maggie, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was, yeah, that was kind of my first thing. It was I did this it was they did open it was Bang Zoom was doing open auditions at Anime Expo like
Right.
2013, I believe. Yeah, 2013. And I had been training in theater for a couple of years. I had tried out for the AX Idol thing in 2011. And I got called back from that. And things just kind of started taking off from there. They gave me a small part. I started doing Walla, all that kind of stuff, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And did you take the dubbing easier, or was it still difficult at first?
It was I actually took to it pretty quickly. I had a lot of training in music and stuff like that. So like I was in like band in middle school and marching band in high school and I did some music stuff in college. So like finding like musicality and rhythm and like getting that timing right was a little easier for me. But yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And was Skip Beat around that same time?
Skip Beat was a few years later, I think. I can't remember. I think it was like 2015, 2016, one of those years. I can't remember. But yeah, that one was I remember it was funny how I got into that was it was also Anime Expo a couple years later. My friend Christina V, I was trying to hit her up to like maybe get lunch or something, but she was super busy over the whole weekend. And she hits me up at the end of the weekend and goes, "Hey, sorry, like they were rushing us all over the place," because she was doing stuff for Sailor Moon at the time. And I was like, "Oh, no worries." Next day, I get an email. No, I get a text from her, and then it says like, "Hey, are you free on Friday?" And I was like, "Oh, is she like trying to like make up for the lunch thing?" I'm like, yeah, I should be good that day." And it was like, "Cool, Mella's gonna email you in a bit." I'm like, "Who's Mella?" But okay. And it was Mella Lee who emailed me about the whole Skip Beat thing. And I was like, "Oh, so this isn't lunch. This is just a job offering. Cool, awesome." But yeah, that was a fun one. Talison's a great director. He's really fun. But yeah.
And I guess with the timeline of things, you know what your next like character part was after Magi?
Let's see. I remember around that time I was still mostly doing like Walla stuff
Yeah.
all over the place, or like little incidental stuff. It was like Magi. There was a series called Capellion. I did a lot of Walla and a lot of things. Like I did Walla for like One Punch Man and Gundam and Seven Deadly Sins and JoJo and like all these different things. In terms of character stuff, like that stuff didn't really start taking off until 2017, 2018, because like that's when like I started booking like things like Shadowverse and yeah, like that kind of stuff. But yeah, and then things just kind of started moving from there, because that was like right after I got out of college. So like once I got out of college, it was able to like free me up a bit better to like pursue this thing a little harder than I was originally doing. But yeah.
I wish Shadowverse also one of your first experiences playing multiple characters in one franchise.
No, actually, the first one, it was one of the first actually. So yeah, technically yes, but the first one was actually Magi, because I was the giant monkey thing in season one, Enshin, and then in season two, I played like a side character named Otto, who has this whole monologue about like, oh, this hole or whatever. That's where like all the people who have been sapped of all their life force get thrown into. And I was also this character named El Nando, who was like a really small side character who was in season one. And I think he was voiced by Liam O'Brien in season one, but I'm not sure. But it was Liam wasn't coming back for whatever reason, so they had me take it over. But yeah.
What do you think is the case so far where you've had to alter your voice the most significantly?
It's probably one of my probably my favorite audition I've ever sent out was when I auditioned, and it's one that I booked. It was when I auditioned for Cthulhu and Smite, because that would probably be the biggest one, because people like you hear that voice print and you're like, oh, it's like super modified. And I'm like, it is modified. It's not as modified as you think it is. Because for that, it was like I would do this thing with like my tongue and like kind of like do like a chamber thing with my cheeks where it will kind of turn into this kind of thing. Kind of like get that like sort of ocean, like big evil ocean demigod kind of thing going on where he's just like sleeping under the water. From the sky, like that kind of thing. But yeah.
What about with Beelzebub?
Beelzebub. You see, that's that without the weird tongue like chamber thing, because that's just me literally going from like the base of my vocal. That is like me from my most guttural place where he's just very down here, very in this kind of place. And I've kind of used that sound in other places as well. Like I use that sound for Ivor in Fallen Legion Revenants as well. And like maybe some things that are like a little like similar, but not quite, because like if you raise it up a little bit more and make it a little more human, where it's more around here, then it's what I did for Lysander for Pokemon Evolutions. So, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is there any special story with first getting involved with the Pokemon franchise in general?
Special story. So first off, Pokemon's probably been one of my biggest fandoms in my entire life. It was literally the first video game I owned was Pokemon Yellow, because my parents were super anti-video games when I was a kid. They were like, no video games all the time. They were super against them. And I was just like, I kept asking, because my friends would have like N64s and like PlayStations and PlayStation 2s and GameCubes and whatnot. And I kept asking, and finally my parents thought they were so smart. They were like, okay, you can have video games when you buy them yourself with your $5 a week allowance. Ha 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 ha. And then my cousin had just bought a Game Boy Advance and was like, hey, I'll sell you my Game Boy Color for $20. I'll even give you Pokemon Yellow for it. And I was just like, what's up? So that's how I got my first video game. And I think they sort of started to soften on it after that, because they're like, okay, it's a handheld thing. At least he could like still go do stuff while having the game with him. Like it's not just going to like stick him in his room forever. But anyway, that is a very long aside to get to Pokemon, which is so Archie was real pretty significant, because probably the Pokemon game I put the most hours into is Pokemon Sapphire, and he's the main villain of that one. Lysander was just a blast to play, because he just has this great emotional arc to him. It's just a very interesting character, kind of hard to define one too, because like his goal is a little unclear, but it's all about figuring that out, because eventually, in essence, his goal is just, he just doesn't want anything to change ever. That's basically so that's basically all he wants, is he just wants everything to stay the same, because he's just like, it's perfect the way it is, don't touch it. But in like a much more like high concept artistic way, you know. Yeah. And as for the anime, because I did some incidentals in the anime here and there, that one was one of the most surreal moments of my career, because I used to watch that series when I was a kid. And a lot of how the episodes are written now is still very similar to how they were written back in the day, where like it's like a little vignette, maybe there's a little Pokemon battle, some message about friendship, blah, 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 where like it just kind of has that same kind of energy to it. Yeah. And it was a very out of body experience of like, I remember watching this as a kid. I'm dubbing this. This is weird. This is so weird. But yeah, so all three of those were like very interesting moments in the career. But yeah.
I know that, of course, you guys always record separately, but has there been a case where you were like really starstruck with who you were working alongside of?
I've done a couple like sessions where it was more than one person, but like most of those times, basically all of those times, were people that like I knew. Like Pokemon Evolutions, we recorded it all at the same time. Like they had a group record with all of us. It was like me and Austin and Amberly Connors, like we're just all on the call. But like I've known them, like they're colleagues. In terms of starstruck, the biggest thing is coming out next week, as of when we're recording this, is Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. And I'm a diehard BoJack Horseman fan. It is my favorite TV show. And Will Arnett plays the main villain in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, which I'm just like, I get to fight BoJack.
Yeah.
But then, like, I also really love Andy Samberg's work too, so that's probably also up there. But yeah, I was never actually obsessed with the voice actors when I was coming up. I just really liked doing the voice acting.
Okay.
There are people whose performances I always thought were great and like really left an impact on me, like from dubs, from anime dubs specifically. One of my favorite voiceover performances of all time is and I can't remember the actor's name, unfortunately, but I'm just gonna look it up. But it was from Bacano, Brian Massey. Brian Massey as Lad Russo was, oh my god, it was just such a good performance. But then like you have like the more subtle, understated ones, like you have Crispin Freeman and Haruhi and stuff like that. Another one, funny enough, this is one of the funniest like roundabout things, was also Bacano. One of the first cosplays I ever did actually the first cosplay I ever did at a convention, and one of the only ones I ever did was Jacuzzi Splot from Bacano. Yeah. And I never actually knew who the voice actor for that was. Turns out it was Joel, who directed me on Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Joel McDonald. And it was like, I remember I brought that up to him on a thread of his where he was talking about Jacuzzi, and he was like, no way. It's just funny. But yeah. So little side. But yeah, probably if we're talking anime, it's probably like a Brian Massey as Lad Russo, or Crispin as Kyon, or if we're looking at like Western animation, like Mark Hamill in everything. Just like especially like Ozai from Avatar, anything from Avatar, honestly. Any member of the cast of Avatar is a great answer to that question.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And do you think that you have a personal preference on working on darker projects opposed to comedic, or?
I like both. I feel like I've just gotten to, I feel like I just like, especially in anime, I tend to get cast in more comedic stuff, like it's mostly recently. Like Vampire Dies in No Time is probably one of the funniest things I've ever worked on. Yeah. That show, for those who have not watched it, you are missing out, because that show is insane.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh my, it is a show that is flying so under the radar, and anybody who watches it is just in for such a treat, because that show is just so off the wall and like just crazy, like over the top. And my character Senya is something. He basically plays a vampire, like, I don't know what the word would be, like a vampire dominatrix almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna ask on Senya in particular, with that first like intro line that he has, doing that long sing-song thing. Was that hard to get down, or was that easy for you?
That's a great story, actually. So I remember being at the session. I had never worked with or met Jade Saxton before, who directed the show. And we're just like, because like the line was, it was originally written as "he's so cute," but then it like as an alt, it was "he's presh." So we were just trying to do it like straight up, just elongated at first, where it was like, "He's so cute," or like something like that. But it like, we just keep going through it, and we just can't quite get something for it. And then I have an idea run through my head. And it was before I could even mention what the idea is. Jade goes, "Can you sing?" And I'm like, I know where you're going with this. And that is exactly what I was thinking. So that's the "he's pressed," like that whole thing. Yeah. I'm just a naturally very loud person anyway, so it's not actually that hard for me to hold that out, but yeah.
Well, on the complete opposite side of that, what do you think so far is the case where you've had to get the darkest headspace?
Probably that's hard. Because there's like three really good answers. As much as I love Bubs and as much as I love Ivor and Fallen Legion Revenants, I think I gotta give it to Lysander. Just because Lysander's just like I've played all of Pokemon like X and Y. Like I know his bag, I know his deal, like I know what kind of mindset he's in. And whereas those two are like literally like the devil, like they just want to take over the world and stuff like that. Lysander's like actually trying to come at this, like trying to execute his plan in a way where he's like actually trying to save the world. He's not trying to destroy the world. He's trying to save it in a way. It's just everybody's disagrees with his tactic. And rightfully so, to be honest. But yeah, it's, and just finding that headspace of just like, you know, I have like, it's very much kind of like, if we want to compare it to like a real world parallel, it's like somebody who's like, it's like if he was in the mindset of like, global warming is going to completely destroy the planet. Okay, that's a real thing. What's your solution? Kill all the humans. Oh, that's a bad idea, but okay. Whereas, so it's his heart is in the right place, but his mind is in a please don't do that kind of place.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I think Lysander, and he's just such a tragic character because he wants this thing so bad and he sees no other way out and he's just unable to like listen and like see any other possibilities. And it's just it's a story of how sometimes our own hubris can cause us our biggest problems, I guess would be it, if I'm going to turn this into like an Oscar pitch for the short. But yeah, it would probably be Lysander. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and you wouldn't necessarily expect that there's as much emotional confliction with Cain and Maple Story either.
Oh, I forgot about Cain. Oh, dang. Crud. Oh, I might change my answer, actually. I completely forgot about, I don't know how I could have forgotten about Cain. Cain might have been one of my favorite projects I've ever done, was just because, like, he just goes through so much over the course of that story. Like, he keeps having he's had his memory wiped. He doesn't know where anything is. His family's gone. He has to murder people to gradually get his memory back. He has to work for the mob and he like really doesn't want to. He finds out the person who's making him, spoilers, he finds out that the person who's making him kill everybody is his own sister and he kills her.
Yeah.
It's a very heavy storyline. And I had never played Maple Story before then. But I had, like, all I knew about Maple Story was like the Adult Swim ads from like 2010 or 2009.
Yeah.
Where like it like seemed like a goofy, cartoony, like kind of fun game. And like I'm acting this plot line out and I'm like, this is not what I thought this was gonna be. But yeah, Cain is one of my favorite performances I've ever done. I love Cain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I can't believe I forgot that.
This is more technical, but do you remember how you got into SAG?
Yes. So if we're talking the moment that got me SAG eligible, that was probably about 4 years ago. And it was it was Todd Habercorn had posted a oh, I'm looking for actors for this show kind of thing. And it was for a non-union dub of this like really like low under the radar show called Vermin. And it was like a French series, I think, originally. And then we were dubbing it into English. Really fun project. And the characters were just so much like fun and like so insane that I just went all out on that audition because the audition script was so good. And I didn't get cast as like one of the leads, but I got cast to do a bunch of like little side characters here and there. And after that, a couple months later, like Todd would bring me in as like little like incidental stuff on projects here and there. A few months later, VSI, a studio out here in LA, they've done stuff like I think they did like I think they did the Evangelion like the new Evangelion series. I think they did Agretzko there. I don't know. They did Vinland Saga there. I know that. So I get an email from them like, hey, Todd cast you in this live action Russian Netflix dub called it was called 1983. And they go, it's Union. What's your SAG number? And I'm just like, I'm not SAG. I don't have a SAG card. And, you know, like when you don't know anything about how the union works, you're like, oh no, this is going to ruin the job. I'm never going to get this job now because I'm not this. And all these, like, I sent them that and they go, oh, okay, here's a 2-page form to fill out. Like everybody makes such a big deal about it, but like, you don't like the production doesn't get fined for hiring non-union people. It's literally just a 2-page contract, the Taft-Hartley form. You just need a headshot and a resume, fill out the Taft-Hartley form and you're done. It's like super easy. But yeah, so that's how I became SAG eligible. What made me join was actually, it was Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. It didn't make me a must join, but I was like it was a union job and I was like one more credit away from joining, away from being a must join, but I just had the money at that point in time. So I was just like, yeah, I guess I'll just do it now just because I can afford to do it now. And I don't know if I'll be able to afford it when I become the must join. So I'll just throw the money at it now. So yeah. So bada bing, bada bada ba. Now I'm in SAG. So yeah.
Yeah, I thought maybe it would have been the Transformers series, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was a fun show too, but yeah.
So then with Fire Emblem, is it kind of like a general story of how you got that audition?
Fire Emblem was, I actually don't know how I have no idea how I got that audition, honestly.
Okay.
It was, it's, you know, sometimes that's the thing about this industry is like, you know, the more people you meet, the more you interact with people, the more connections you build. Sometimes people just recommend you for things and you just have no idea why or who or how. So it was because Fire Emblem tends to be done through Cup of Tea, which is out here in the Valley. I just got the audition for Fire Emblem Heroes out of nowhere. And I was like, I've been trying to get in with these guys for years. How did I just get this now? Like, there was no email correspondence. It was the first email I ever got from them. I've worked with them a few times on other things as well. Can't talk about them, but I have. I have worked with them a few other times. Great production company, like absolutely fantastic people to work with. Super sweet. Just really chill vibe, chill environment, you know? But yeah, I just got the audition out of nowhere. I was like, okay, let's do this. And I remember I did read for Artur, and it was like one of the first things I read for there, and I booked it. So I was like, oh, cool. Which is funny because he's kind of out of my usual comfort zone of a character. Mm-hmm. But yeah, because he's kind of the more up here kind of like innocent kind of sound, which is like stuff that I don't really get hired for a lot. So I was like, oh yeah, let's do it. Mm-hmm. It's like that and Kunjun were like the only two, but yeah.
Does anything stand out from being directed by Caitlin?
I had known Caitlin for a few years before then. Like me and Kyle had met at cons. Me and Caitlin had like met at like random like events and mixers and whatnot. So like we had known each other beforehand. So like it wasn't so much like I get to work with this esteemed director. It was, oh, cool, Caitlin's on this. Let's just mess around. But yeah, so we just had fun. It was great.
I know he has some really funny lines like the sneezing and the spider, the scared of the spider thing. And
yeah, it was, yeah, they just threw those in front of me. I'm not much of a Fire Emblem, like I don't know much about Fire Emblem as a source material. So they were kind of like giving me the like background on it. And they told me that like he has this whole thing about spiders, and I was like, okay, we're just gonna go nuts here. And it was basically a situation of like, I'm just gonna go as far as I possibly can, and if they want to pull me back, they'll pull me back, which they might have. I can't remember, but yeah, it was just a fun character, you know. We just kind of messed around the whole time. Like there were no real it wasn't like, it's like some sessions for some projects are, and this has nothing to do with like this tactic works, this tactic doesn't, but some projects are much more serious, much more intense, have a lot more like there's a lot more gravity like in the room that you feel, because like the director's really taking it seriously and the writers are really taking it seriously, and they're like really like, let's go, let's just like make this the most perfect piece of art ever. Like Transformers War for Cybertron was really that way, and I found that incredibly artistically fulfilling. But at the same time, Fire Emblem Heroes was a lot more like, it was a room full of people that were just like, we know how to act, we know what we're doing, let's just have some fun with this, let's try new things, let's like explore and like just like go nuts and just have all these fun little moments. And both of those tactics definitely work depending on what you're working on. Like, for example, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, very much that latter, where it's like the like super goofy, like go nuts in the session, like have a lot of fun with it. Whereas something like Kane from Maple Story or Lysander was definitely more in the like, all right, take this seriously, like really just like hone in, like have those like big actory like beats and stuff like that. Like, different productions call for different things. Yeah, the spider stuff, I definitely remember like just going nuts on that. Like I do remember, I think they did pull me back once, because like on one of the takes I was like, a spider! And it was just like, and they're like, okay, calm that down a bit. And I'm like, but yeah.
Yeah, well, there's a pretty big fan following with your performance as Artur, so it was fun.
That's good to hear. I'm glad that people resonated with it, because I had a lot of fun doing it. Because like I said, it is a very different kind of character for me, and it's a kind of character that I'd like to do more, honestly. Because it's not that I don't like doing like the villains like Bubs and Lysander and Cthulhu, or the big boisterous, more comedic characters like a Merlin or a Senya or Paseta in One Piece, or Tomita in Maisetsu, stuff like that. Like, it's just that it is also nice to like get to play in other zones, because like, again, the only other time I've done a character that's anything like that was when I did Kunjun and Genshin Impact, and it's just kind of refreshing to like play in a new kind of headspace, Yeah. So I'm glad that I'm glad that it resonated with people, because then I could be like, yes, see, I can do this too.
Is there a special story of getting involved with Genshin too?
So funny enough, I've never actually auditioned for Genshin ever. The reason I got in was because a friend of mine recommended me to Chris Fiella, and I had known Chris for a few years beforehand. Like, we actually met because we were on a WonderCon panel together like years ago. Like, this was way before Genshin was even like a concept. And Chris is a super chill guy. Like, he's, super sweet dude too. Also, like, great dude. But yeah, it was, sometimes like you just know so many people that like things slip through the cracks. Like, for example, Kane was one of my favorite performances I've ever done, and I completely forgot about it earlier. And I was like, oh crap, I can't believe I forgot about that. But it's just sometimes you just have these long lists of people and you're like, okay, that. And then one of my other friends who also does casting recommended me to him, and he was like, oh yeah, sure, let's bring him in. So I got to do Kunjun, which was funny because I talked to a lot of people afterwards, and because I did Kunjun, and my friend Matt Greenbaum did Ajdaha, who's like the big dragon dude. And it was people who know me and know Matt were mostly like, I would have expected you guys to be cast like swap your roles. Like, they would have expected Matt to be Kunjun and me to be Ajdaha. And I was like, yeah, but I kind of liked it better this way. Like, it was because Matt did a great job as Ajdaha. Like, he had this like great sort of gravity. He got this like great gravelly sound with him, and I got to play around in kind of like young male protagonisty kind of area where like I got to play a character that's not so sure of himself. Like, I tend to play characters that are very confident, very like boisterous, they know what they're doing and they know what they're going to get up to. But it was nice playing a character that like is a little more vulnerable, just doesn't quite know what's going on, has this amnesia problem. It's just like, yeah, it was just it was really interesting to try out, you know.
Who do you think that you personally relate to the most then, with who you played so far?
It's funny because it's a character that I don't think people would think of for me very often, but probably the one I vibe with the most is from I briefly mentioned it earlier, but it's a series called My Setsu Opening Act, and I played a character named Junki Tomita, who's a stand-up comedian who's kind of the goofy guy of his group, but is also the one that like has the confidence to like, you know, spearhead an effort, try new things, that kind of stuff. So or he's the one who's like gung-ho and like people are like, maybe you shouldn't do that, and he's just like, I'll do it anyway. And that's kind of me. So yeah, I would probably say Tomita from My Setsu. Yeah.
What about Jeffrey Stewart?
Jeffrey Stewart, that's another fun one. I can't believe we hadn't talked about him yet. Jeffrey Stewart, that's another good one because he's like the oldest and I'm the oldest in my family. Like I have two younger siblings, but yeah. So yeah, that was interesting too, but to like dig into that kind of thing. But yeah, I like Jeffrey a lot too. He's fun.
That's also kind of in the archetype of characters that you wouldn't expect for you necessarily play.
Yeah. Which is funny because Jeffrey is like one of the closest performances to just my regular voice that I've had. Because like, you know, because of a lot of the characters that I have, people are like, oh, Adin's like the deep voice guy. My voice isn't actually that deep. It's like very like mid-range kind of like, it's not as high as like, say, you know, Coy or Zach, or actually Zach's is probably around the same range as me. But it's not as high as like Coy or Griffin Burns or Griffin Puatu or Brandon Winkler, those guys. It's not as high as that. But like also like I'm not Patrick Seitz. I'm not Chris Tergliafera. Like I'm not the big barrel-chested guy. I'm just kind of like in the middle, you know? So like I kind of like either have to find things that are in that middle or find ways to sway around a bit because there's a lot of work for the deep guys and there's a lot of work for the high guys. The middle doesn't really get a ton of like, ooh, we want like somebody middle of the road. Like it doesn't get as much pull as like those two tend to do, mostly in anime. In video games, it gets a ton of pull, but in anime, like a lot of the times they want either the high pitched guy or the super deep guy. So it's kind of like finding that balance of like sometimes they do want the middle guy, sometimes I could stray into the deep stuff and like do more in that range, like Enshin and Magi is definitely in the deeper range. And then sometimes I can go higher and do stuff like Senya or Artur or Kunjun and stuff like that. But yeah.
I know most recently, Miss Cole singing be part of Blue Period. That's a really good show.
I loved working on that. That was I was very upfront about this on Twitter, but it was I was like, it is so refreshing to have an anime that takes place in like high school, early college age, where the characters aren't all like super high pitched tenors. Like I'm like, teenagers can have deep voices. Like your voice is pretty deep, for example. So like I would imagine that like you probably had a deeper voice when you were a teenager and stuff too. But yeah. So it's like, you know, teenagers can just sound like people. So, you know, I got to like it's also like I just kind of got to be me. And it was funny because I didn't audition for Blue Period either. It was Todd, who I mentioned earlier, just brought me in on it. And I was just like, he was just like, just be you. And I was like, awesome, cool. So I got to be another character I relate with a lot, where he's not necessarily for the like, yeah, I'm gonna like draw a picture of this girl's boobs and like, yeah, like not so much that stuff, but more like he's just a guy who wants to watch the game. Yeah, and I'm a big football fan, so I could vibe with that. So yeah, I love Blue Period. It's just such a grounded dub. It's just such a good cast too. So yeah.
So is there anything else that's upcoming that you're part of that you can safely talk about, or?
Probably the only one that I can talk about that's upcoming is probably Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. And in terms of like voiceover projects, it is, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, that was probably the most fun I've ever had on a project, because they really let us just do whatever the hell we wanted. They let us just go nuts and like try ad libs and do all this weird stuff. We just messed around the whole time. It was great. And I'm a huge Borderlands fan. Like, I've played all the games. Borderlands 2 is probably my favorite. Handsome Jack is actually another performance I'm going to add to that, like, performances that inspired you. Was, again, I can't remember who played Handsome Jack. I do voiceover and I'm so bad at remembering who voices who. 1 second. I'm gonna look that up. Damian Clark. Yeah, he's unbelievable in that role. And it's like, that's gotta be one of the best one of the greatest video game villain performances of like the past decade or more. Is just, oh Lord. Him in that role is unbelievable. Yeah, and it's just, I remember specifically when I was early in my voiceover journey playing Borderlands 2 and thinking, this seems like a fun game. This seems like it would be a fun game to do voiceover for. And I remember having that thought process and telling my friends about it. And now that I've worked on it, yeah, I was right. Because we just got to have a blast. So, and the script for this game, so good, so good. And it was like you could tell as I was working on it, this was not just a game that was like, okay, here's game number 75 that we're working on this week. All right, let's go do it. This was like, everybody was super passionate about it, had like super clear ideas and all these like interesting like thoughts, and was willing to like try out new things and like do all these improvs and like mess around with the story and all that kind of stuff. And it's just gonna be a blast. Trust me, like, this is going to be one of the best games that Gearbox has put out in a very long time. It is so good. So yeah, check out Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. If you want to play as me, I am one of the gallant player voices, and I sound like this. Very Jay Peterman from Seinfeld. Yeah.
So I know your career is still blossoming, of course, but my final question is always asking, what do you want your legacy to be?
That's hard. Like, if you asked me when I was like super early on in my career, it would have been like, I want to be remembered as the best ever to do it. I want to be remembered as the greatest of all time. I want to like overtake Mel Blanc. I want to be like the Tom Brady of voiceover and stuff like that. Now it's not, like, that's like a bad goal to have, because that goal constantly compares you to other people and it makes you jealous. It makes you like, oh, well, why did they get it? I should get that. It like gives you that kind of mindset. Now my goal is just kind of to be the best person, the best version of me that I could be. I also want to be the person that like helps like people like grow further in their careers. Like, one person that I was really close to in this community that we used to get coffee all the time, we would talk all the time, was Brad Venable, who passed away, unfortunately, last year in January. It was just the funny, it was just, I remember it was, people would always talk about like, Brad doesn't get enough attention. Brad doesn't get the attention that he deserves, blah, 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 blah. And then when he passed away, Twitter exploded. Like, everybody had something to say. Everybody had a thing to say about Brad and how he helped everybody and how he always was looking to help people out, how he was always such a facilitator of communication. And I'd like to live up to that kind of ideal. But, I just want to be that person that like can live up to that ideal and be the best version of myself that I can be and bring out the best in others that I can,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. I'm glad that we got to do this.
Sure thing, man. It's fun.
Yeah. Is there anything that you want to say to the Fire Emblem Heroes sub?
Yeah, the next time we do the what's the like choose your legend or choose your hero, the next time we do that, vote for Artur, because I want a new skin. And I also want to rub it in the other actors' faces that I beat them. But nah, I'm just messing. But vote for him. I'm dead serious.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, man.
Bye.
Catch you later.